Welcome back, gang. It's Deltia from Deltiasgaming.com. Necrom Chapter is here, and we have an updated PvP tier list that's going to include the best and worst classes in Cyrodiil, Battlegrounds, and Imperial City. You're going to want to watch this video as I rank all 14 builds. That's 7 Stamina and 7 Magicka builds in the Elder Scrolls Online. This has been updated after I've played each and every one of them with the inclusion of the Arcanist class. Where will it rank? Number 1, 2, or 3? You'll have to wait and see or skip ahead with the timestamps below. If you do want to pick up and play any of these builds, check the link in the description below where I'll have each and every single one of them updated and working for the Necrom Chapter. Without further ado, let's start with what I consider the weakest class in the Elder Scrolls Online PvP right now, and it's the Stamina Necro, coming in at 14. The Stamina Necro comes in at last on the list, C- tier. The reason why the Stam Necro is so low is simply the Stamina Warden does absolutely everything better than this class. It has very predictable damage. With one loadout using Wrecking Blow or Dizzying Swing, it's just super predictable and very easy to counter. The Necro also doesn't have an on-demand stun that's very reliable like every single other class, and the healing is weak unless you stack tons and tons of weapon damage, and then you're vulnerable with that weak resource sustain. What also affects this class ranking, it is not enjoyable to play whatsoever. You're sitting there doing 4, 5, 6 buffs before you strike for 3 or 4 seconds and rinse and repeat. Sure, you can make this class work, and sure, you can hit very hard on it, but there's simply a lot better options in the Elder Scrolls Online currently. Let's keep it moving to another weak class, what I consider 13, one of the worst, and that's the Mag Necromancer. The Mag Necromancer comes in at C tier on our list. So what this does a little bit better than the Stamina Necro, 1, it pairs very well with Vampire Elusiveness, kind of countering the stamina lack of mobility built in, but you can also use Vampire Elusiveness on stamina to be fair. You also can do pretty good bombing still with the Mag Necro, even using dual wield or the lightning staff, and it has better group utility if you want to off heal or do something else with a resto staff on your back bar. So right now it's a pretty weak playstyle. It can play as a bomber, up close and personal with proc sets, or having some ranged DPS, and you have a little bit more flexibility, a little bit more group utility, but I still consider it weak, and it used to be my favorite class in PvP. Moving on to what might be a controversial ranking, and I'm going to put here the Mag Arcanist is next. The Mag Arcanist comes in at C+ tier on the list, pretty low on our list, and let me explain what I consider fully Mag Arcanist. This is something using light armor and fully speccing in attributes into magic. The game developers really want you to use the Crux and Pragmatic Fate Carver 4.5 second channel, which gives you a shield. You cannot be interrupted while the shield holds. The issue with this skill is the shield gets cut in half in PvP, number 1. Number 2, you can be stunned, you can be bashed, and you can be line of sighted. And a lot of times, landing the Pragmatic Fate Carver takes a lot of skill practice and timing, making it unreliable for the average player. Now, when you do line it up and you use a set like Deadly Strikes or something else, it can absolutely rip through the competition. Also, the Mag Arcanist has a couple different spammable options. Instead of just using Pragmatic Fate Carver, you can use Rune Blade or Flail. It's very durable, it has great group utility, and good CC. The issue with the Mag Arcanist is this: the stamina version is just a whole lot better in my opinion. It's better bombing, it's better 1vx, it's better in a duel, and it's better in open world. Everything the Mag Arcanist can do, Stamina can do better, and that's why I rank it low on the list. Moving on to the B tier list, and we're going to start with the Mag Sorc first. The Mag Sorcerer is B- tier on the list and remains a staple in ESO PvP. Simply put, the Mag Sorc is great in the right hands, but you have to play off enormously fast speed or you're going to be deady spaghetti. It's unreliable defensive mechanisms. Yes, you have a bird that can burst heal. Yes, you have shields that can scale off magic and health, but for a moment, if you drop your guard, you're not streaking and getting away, you're dead. It's just very, very vulnerable and dependent on ultra-fast gameplay, in which most players can't really reliably do. The class has a great execute, single target, it has good off-healing and group utility. In the right hands, it makes it look really, really powerful. But for the average player, you're going to be shut down with reflect abilities. You're going to constantly have to bar swap, and you're not going to have the AoE damage that a Stam Sorcerer has. You get a Mag Dragonknight on you with a bunch of dots that can actually move using elusive mist or chains, and they'll lock you down, CC you, put on dots, and just chew through your skills and nuke you. Now, the Sorcerer with Way of Fire and some heavy armor can absolutely nuke players, or you can use Twilight Matriarch, do a bunch of healing and off heal. It's not a completely dead class, I just think a lot of other classes do it a little bit better. Moving on. Speaking of other classes that do a lot better, we're going to have the weaker of the two. That's the Stamina Nightblade up next. The Stamina Nightblade comes in at B tier, still a great dueling 1vx machine, and people constantly ask me why I rate it so low. Simply put, the Magic Nightblade does everything the Stamina Nightblade does better. The reason why predominantly is the concealed weapon skill gives unique 10% damage increase when major expedition ends. This is a magic main spamble, not the stamina version surprise attack. So as a Magic Nightblade, you just mathematically hit a lot harder. Also on a Magic Nightblade, you can use all the same sweaty proc sets for ganking. You can use all the same back bar defensive sets like Rally Cry, Mara's Bomb, Date or Trick Daddy, and everything else, and take advantage of that unique 10% damage. You also have the flexibility of using a lot of different weapon choices. Also, a terrible downside to Stamina Nightblade is that Zoss added stealth detect potions to do 43.5 meter range, so it's even harder to stay sneaky in PvP. And most Magic Nightblades have adapted their builds to not even use Cloak or Shadowy Disguise, or you can or cannot use it and still be super effective. So Stamina Nightblade, it's still pretty good. In the right hands, it'll smoke you 1v1 and do really good 1vx. The issue is I think Magic Nightblade can do both of those things a little bit better in the right hand. This also has a high skill cap, so you'll see players doing fantastically wild things 1vx with it and think, I'm gonna do that. Not without a lot of gameplay and reflexes like you're a 14-year-old chugging Diet Mountain Dew in your basement, and you know who you are. But moving along to one I really dropped low on the list, and I'm sorry, Stamina Sorc. Stamina Sorc comes in at B tier. So the reason I rank Stamina Sorc here is it's seen some nerfs and it's main spammable. What it does really, really well is run massive speed and super high proc set damage. The issue is Stamina Arcanist gets 15% bonus to status effects, so some of those cheesy proc sets that I love to run will just work better on a Stamina Arcanist. Also, other classes have access to Elusiveness, allowing you to zip away effortlessly, so making Streak a little less relevant. And lastly, I think the two things that hold the class back from being God tier are weak resource sustain and reliance on Dark Deal or Dark Exchange to constantly getting your resources back, which can be interrupted, CC'd, bashed, and so on. Similar to the Magic Sorc, the Stam Sorc is absolutely fantastic in the right hands, but again, it comes down to if you have slight slow reaction time, hey, I'm almost 40, I can relate, or you make one mistake and you don't get your Dark Deal off, you don't get your Burst Heal off, or you have to double bar Twilight Matriarch, limiting the bar slots that you have available in your utility. Stam Sorc in the right hands has huge damage, but it has a high skill cap built just for mobility. Love the class, love still playing it, I just think there are better options. Moving on to a better option, I think that's the Magic Templar, ironically. Magic Templar comes in B+ tier. So what the Magic Templar does very, very well is range damage, and it is just absolutely God mode tanky. Living Dark, toppling charge, you are not going to be dying very easily. But what the game really wants you to do with the Magic Templar is to sit back and pop Dark Flares or something else at range. And the reason why is the main spammable biting jabs is simply better than puncturing sweeps all shapes and form. Puncturing sweeps doesn't heal you very much, and biting jabs doesn't heal you at all, but it gives you the weapon and spell damage buff and hits very hard still. And you can make a mechanical acuity build, a deadly strikes build, and you can still play in a melee range, or you can play with a proc set loadout. With Magic, you're kind of pigeonholed into a weak main spammable or sitting back and doing Dark Flares or some other range spammable that you like, and sitting back waiting until someone gets low HP and then beaming, which is quite effective. Now you pair the Magic Templar with all the defensive capabilities, Stage 3 Vampire and Elusiveness, and you have something incredibly survivable with very low effort. I still like playing my Magic Templar from time to time. I just think the stamina version outshines in every single way, but it's still quite effective actually at range and doing beams. If you use Snakes in the Stars set, it can absolutely annoy players that are heal stacking and you can just nuke them single target. But you get on a stamina version and you just have a lot better options. Moving on to something you're going to kind of see is a Magic version might be a little bit weaker, and that's what's up next, and that's the Magic Warden. Lord Warden! Next up, we have the Magic Warden coming in at A- tier. So simply put, kind of like the stamina versions, the Magic Warden is great. It has Deep Fissure for delayed burst, it has great group utility. It can use Polar Wind and stack huge HP and do massive healing. You run into something similar to the Necro, you're just sitting there constantly buffing. You feel like you do nothing but buffing, 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 buffing. It requires a lot of stamina skills, and the stamina version just hits harder objectively, has better weapon choices, and it has all the group utility of a Magic Warden. And that's really why the Stamina Warden shines in this current meta. So if you want something with super high group utility, people always want a Magic Warden in the group. The issue with it is this: you can get almost the identical same utility with the Stamina Warden and a lot more of the bursts, both AoE and single target, and that's why I don't recommend it over it currently. Moving on to some of the heavy hitters, and up first we have the Stamina Templar. Stamina Templar comes in at A- tier, so what it does better than the Magic Templar is you have a lot of different ways to play this. You can play this up close and personal using Biting Jabs as your main spammel. You can use a Sweaty Proc Set loadout that I like to use, or you can use the Dizzying Swing loadout with Wrecking Blow and get Major Berserk built in. You can run Stage 3 Vampire and solve all the mobility issues with it, and you just have an amazing beam using magic. And what I love about the hybrid stamina builds is you can dump all of your magic skills into healing and buffs and really save on your stamina for doing a whole lot of damage. Power of the Light also is really great delayed bursting tool, but it just takes a bit longer than something like Deep Fissure or Blast Bones, and you can easily counter it with the cleanse using Mara's Bomber and in-class cleanse, so it's just not as reliable as the other ones in the group. But it does hit extraordinarily hard now, and you still remain one of the tanky, one of the strongest survivable classes in the game. I just love the Stamina Templar. It's hard to rank it this low. It's one of my favorite things to play on and off stream, but I still think there are better options. You either get better burst, higher survivability, better mobility, or a blend of all of those with these other classes I'm about to list. And now we're gonna get to the big dogs. 5 to go on our list. Stamina Arcanist is up here. Stam Arcanist is an A tier, and it's actually maybe pretty low on the list. The thing about the Stamina Arcanist, unrelated to the Magic Arcanist, is you can play it a ton of different ways. You can play it with Pragmatic Fate Carver with Beam. You can play it the cheesy dual-wield proc set loadout and lean on that increased status effect passive like I do. And you can even play it with Wrecking Blow using Arcans as your mythic choice, have high survivability, high mobility with Vampire, great resource sustain with some skills like Recuperative Treatises, and run Bewitched Sugar Skulls and Roskas, and you are an absolute monster on the battlefield and extraordinarily hard to kill. And a new build that I have on my website, you can run a nice bomber setup using the Eye Ultimate or Scalding Rune with Dark Convergence and be one of the best bombers on the battlefield as well. It is one of the better PvP classes right now, if I'm being honest. What holds the class back, in my opinion, is a delayed bursting utility skill like the Warden's Deep Fissure. Simply put, you try to line up all of your burst around a delayed burst mechanic and then nuke someone down in a very short window with 3, 4, 5 things landing. So what you end up getting is something that's like a CC bot, Rune of Colorless Pool, one of the best, if not the best, single target stun in the game. You have Flail, which you can use as an AoE mobilize similar to the Dragonknight Burning Talons, but it costs stamina instead of magic. And what you have is an all-around fantastic PvP class. It's hard to rank it in this position. In the right player's hands, you have a lot of great group utility, you have really good AoE damage, and you have incredible CC. What I'd rate a little bit higher is really that delayed bursting tool, if you had that to line it up. What you have to do now is rely on Rune of Colorless Pool as your CC mechanic, get someone low, CC them, incredibly annoying to deal with, and either beam, flail, or use proc sets to nuke them down, which does work very well. But I still think there's some better options, and one of them being the Magic Dragonknight. Moving on to the Magic Dragonknight A+ tier. I always say this every tier list. People leave me comments saying, Delty, you're an idiot, and that might be true. The Magic and Stamina Dragonknight are essentially pretty much the same. So when you say magic, I'm assuming you're using the magic attributes, and you could make an argument this is the best PvP class, and I wouldn't fault you for it. And I'm going to sit here and assume you're not running a complete hybrid and you're leaning into magic. The best hybrid / magic Dragonknight build uses mechanical acuity. It sits back, pops corrosive armor with 2 Nurned axes, 100% pen on direct damage abilities, running deep breath, big whips, and absolutely nukes people with almost 100% crit chance. And that is the strongest build in my opinion on the Magic Dragonknight. You have great AoE CC. CC. It rewards aggressive playstyle. It pairs extremely well with Vampire. But the downsides, it lacks an execute, requires a lot of stamina abilities, and is really optimal with Vampire for mobility, or you're going to be slow as a snail. I just think stamina is a little bit better because your weapon choices. Magic Dragonites typically run dual wield though, so does stamina. But Magic Dragonites don't run 2H. They don't run the 2H bomber setup. Yes, you can still bomb on it. Yes, you can do great in the dual group and so on. But I think the stamina version of this is just slightly better. Though I could be wrong. Just read my comments. It happens every day. Moving along to the top 3, and we have number 3, still the Magic Nightblade. The Magic Nightblade comes in an S- tier. So what can I say about it? It has the best single target burst and maybe the best AoE burst as well. It's fantastic as a bomber using Rushing Agony. People have adapted the sets and the builds, and it is absolutely amazing, especially if you pick this up in mid-year mayhem. You can run Cloak, or actually it's arguable it might be stronger without Cloak, so you don't have to rely on being stealth. You can brawl with this thing. You have Concealed Weapon as your main spamble and Twisting Path combination, giving you an extra 10% damage, and you just have the most math built in to do the most damage, along with having some of the best burst healing with Healthy Offering. So what's the downsides? It requires a very high skill cap. Once you get to old 40-year-old Deltia, your reflexes ain't what it used to be. You miss a CC break, you miss a light attack, and you don't have your 5-stack Merciless up for a Spectral Bow, or you don't CC someone properly to fire off that Spectral Bow, you're not going to see the huge clips that you see other people using. But if you can, and you are good at bar swapping, you are great at timing, you're patient, you're using your heals and keeping your buffs up, this thing is an absolute monster. Another reason the Magic Nightblade is so awesome is Twisting Path or Refreshing Path is great for the group. You really want a Nightblade in your group, especially if you can use Soul Tether, Twisting Path, Refreshing Path, giving everybody in your group Major Expedition, that AoE CC nuke. It's just fantastic. The reason I don't rate it as number 2, number 1, and you can make an argument that it is, it's really hard to play. And that just remains the downside of it, is it requires a high skill cap and the right person to make it shine. But if you have that ability, you'll want to pick this up. Moving on to 2 that I think are overall better for the average everyday player on Elder Scrolls Online. What's it gonna be? Number 2 is the Stamina Warden. Lord Warden! Coming in at S tier, baby, buckle up. What can I say about the Warden? It does every single thing the Magic Warden does, but it has better group utility. And that's what I love about the Stamina Warden. I was skeptical about the Wrecking Blow, Major Berserk setup, but once I adapted my build and started playing with it, I found out, oh my god, it's amazing, because you have the best of both worlds with a follow-up passive with 2H. You run Wrecking Blow for Major Berserk. You got Minor Berserk on your bar with Birds of Prey, and I'm not good at math, but that's a whole lot of damage amps. Then you slot in Essency for another 10% damage, and you're just walloping people with or without high weapon and spell damage. Now you have built-in crit as well, and a lot of resource sustain coming in from your passives, and this thing is absolutely insane. Throw on stage 3 Vampire, and you are just almost unkillable, matching the group utility of a Magic Warden with the mind-numbing burst that you love from stamina builds. You can honestly make an argument that this thing is number 1, as you can see how highly I speak of it, and there's not a whole lot of downsides. The major downside, I would say, is you're constantly buffing. It's just buff, buff, goose. Buff, buff, goose is what I call it. And so a little bit more buff-centric in requiring that, and if you let a couple of them fall off, your resources tank, your survivability tanks, and you could get caught off guard. So maintaining 3, 4, 5, 6 buffs at a time is pretty tough for the average player. You also have to be advanced in your timing. So Deep Fissure fires off twice. You really want that second time the Deep Fissure fires off to be your burst combo. So you're actually firing the Deep Fissure off, waiting about 8 seconds or so, ripping off a fully charged heavy attack, trying to land the Dawnbreaker. So the Dawnbreaker lands, your Deep Fissure lands, your heavy attack lands. Putting as much damage in as small as window as possible is essentially ESO PvP. This thing can do it with the best of them, but it's just really hard to pull off unless you have consistent practice. Love the Warden, but I couldn't rank it number 1. Because I got my baby still at number 1. Yes, I'm a homer, but I love it. It's the Stamina Dragonknight. Next up, we have my baby, the Stamina Dragonknight, coming in at S+ tier. And of course it does. You can make an argument this build is technically magic, but what I love about it is there's 3 god tier ways to play this. Dual wheel with cheesy proc sets or Mara's Bomb spin to win. 2H with Wrecking Blow getting Major Berserk, and then also doing whips for single target pressure. And you can play with the 2H carve build and be be one of, if not the best bombers in the game. You have a lot of group utility coming in the form of buffs and synergies. This is great for small, sweaty group play, Burning Talons, Igneous Weapon, but you don't have the group utility of the Warden when it comes to healing. That's one of the downsides. So the weak off healing is really the downside, and it is a bit magic dependent. So I play a quote-unquote stamina build. When I say stamina, I'm leaning on the stamina attribute as my main attribute, and then also my main spamble is considered stamina. But you still have the holy juggernaut corrosive armor, which gives you 100% penetration on direct damage, is completely unique to the Dragonknight. It has the best, if not some of the best, resource sustain built into it. You play it with stage 3 vampire, ultimate generating machine. Even though Mara's bomb has got nerfed, you just switch to Daedra Trickery. Daedra Trick Daddy! And this thing is just as survivable and builds insane ultimate. Not to mention you can use minor heroes and potions with Daedra Trickery to get major heroes, minor heroes, and popping ultimates, feeding your resource sustain. And did I mention corrosive armor 12 seconds where you basically can't die in 100% direct damage penetration? It has built-in major breach, major and minor brutality, major defile, major mending. It's just a major player. Great burst healing, healing over time. You get the point. I love this thing. If you're playing it right, you'll be sitting around 6,000 weapon damage, 30,000 resistances, super high multiplier, running a bunch of sweaty proc sets. But don't listen to me. What are all the sweats playing? Well, they're probably playing Stam Arcanist now because it's new and fun. But besides that, what are they usually playing? You fire up a high MMR battleground, and what do you got? 9 Dragonites, great. You go down to Imperial City, and you got some sweat lords sitting in Eruption, just sitting there begging you to duel, great. You got some meatball running a 2H Brawler Carve Bomber build, and you get nuked by a Dark Convergence Suck-In and a Cleave. It's miserable. So don't rely on me. Look where all those sweats are playing. They're usually playing a Stamina Dragonknight, a Magic Dragonknight hybrid, and that's why I rank at number 1. But where was I right? Where was I wrong? I'm sure you're gonna tell me in the comments, so please leave me one. The YouTube algorithm loves hate messages, and so do I. And if you got something out of this video and you don't hate me, hit that thumbs up. Also check the links in the description if you'd like to play one of these builds, and I appreciate you watching.